It is the best time of the week because it's Thursday, and that means it's the Impact Series. We get to talk to amazing people all around the world who are on extraordinary projects in the social impact space. Today, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Felice Trirogoff.
Perfect.
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm just going to quickly add our moderator. If folks have questions, comments, please feel free to share that in the chat below. Okay, so just a little bit more while we're waiting. So the Anthem Awards is a brand new award platform which honors purpose and mission-driven work from brands, organizations, and individuals around the globe. We are so excited. We're going to be launching our second season in 2 weeks on June 14th. You're going to be hearing so much from us. We have lots of tons of amazing content that's all going to be coming out in the next couple weeks. But now we can get started with our conversation today with Felice. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. First, I want to say congratulations. You and your colleagues at the American Institute for Research are inaugural Anthem winners. So thank you so much for being a part of our community, and thank you for all the work that you do.
Absolutely. AIR has a great bunch of people, and the teams that were awarded are excellent colleagues. So yay.
Yay.
I'm happy for them.
Yeah, great. Awesome. So you are joining us from Texas today, which is, ground zero in many ways for civil rights and civil liberties, and many conversations, national conversations the United States is currently having around all kinds of issues, abortion to LGBTQ plus issues to the gun rights debate that we're currently. Can you talk about, so you've been organizing around a lot of issues, including reproductive justice, trans, talk about your work, tell us about what you're doing, report to us from the ground in Texas. What's happening?
Sure. And, I mentioned this, in our earlier discussions. And while I don't work directly with the following organizations, I've been in the nonprofit space for several years. And so there are a lot of organizations in the state that are doing incredible work around those issues that you just mentioned. I promote the work of Jane's Due Process and the Lilith Fund, whose staff work tirelessly to make sure that abortion access is available to those that need it the most. When we look at protecting Texas's most vulnerable population and trans citizens, I definitely follow the Transgender Education Network of Texas, also known as TENT, and follow their lead to protect, the vulnerable populations. Because I don't directly do organizing work, I often find that my activism looks a little different, and I think that it's it's how do you stay on top of being present and being active when there are so many other things coming around. And I definitely look to promote the work of people and organizations that I trust. And those three, there are several more, but those three especially are timely. And I know that the work that they do.
Amazing. So we know, obviously, because of the events from last week in Uvalde, that gun reform is, kind of both a Texas issue, but also a national conversation across the United States. Can you talk a little bit about the interconnectedness between gun violence and the advocacy work that you're doing in some cases?
So to be a progressive Texan, your work sort of cuts across all issues, right? Like it's hard to be siloed in Texas just because it affects so many people. And I think it's the same with gun regulation and gun violence and, looking to solve that problem. It's almost as if it's just like, God, it's just like another thing to put on the list, right? That you have to be aware of, that you have to see how it affects the communities that you work with. And I think that unfortunately, it's just one other topic that you just have to be aware of and see how it how it affects, you know, abortion rights and all the other sort of vulnerable communities that that are here in Texas that we're all sort of working to protect and support. So, you know, you can't, while you can focus your time and energy on one issue, there are so many others that are just interconnected. So it's helpful to be aware of what else is going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I know also you're really deeply committed to programs like Outsider and Stories Within. Can you talk a little bit about that community work and some of those
Sure. Sure. So Stories Within came up last April after the Atlanta spa shootings in March of 2021. And it was made by and for the AAPI population in Texas. And it really talks about connection, right? And representation. And growing up in the Texas Panhandle, I never really saw, you know, queer Asians like me, and then how they dealt with racism and how they dealt with discrimination. So it was an opportunity to talk to my younger self about, you know, that it does get better, and that there are people who support you. And even though that wasn't around when I was younger, it's important that, you know, our stories still exist and our stories are still important to tell. So with Stories Within, it was just a way to, again, vocalize the stories that we all sort of share in this community. As with Outsider, it's an Austin-based organization that hosts an annual conference for queer artists around the world. And again, I just want to bring it back to connection and make sure that, you know, for so long there were what art looked like was very limited and was like short-sighted. And this is an opportunity to share other voices and other queer artists and their beautiful, you know, their beautiful vision of what the future could look like.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. Can you talk a little bit about, I don't know, like thinking about, I often think of, you know, my personal journey as an activist as like a lifelong dedication. And so when you have dedicated your life in your professional career or something, you know, it's like it takes a lot of ups and downs. Can you talk about like what gives you hope and keeps you motivated and like keeps you out there working, organizing, when, you know, there's setbacks and really horrible tragedies, terrible things happen, and like new legislation comes down from DC and you're constantly fighting these battles. Like, can you talk a little bit about that? Just kind of like about your personal journey and like how do you stay excited, enthusiastic, motivated, all of these things to do this important work?
Sure. My thoughts about activism, especially in Texas, is that a fresh new hell can surface every day, right? It seems like the hits keep coming. And while it can be overwhelming and exhausting, I think that, you know, your activism looks different. And sometimes it means donating time and money to causes that resonate with your values. It looks like sharing resources and posts on, you know, your social media accounts. And oftentimes it sounds like having difficult conversations with your family and friends and even colleagues to remind them that they should care about other people. At the core, like I definitely am an optimist. And I had a colleague once tell me that grace bats last, right? So you know, we're not done fighting. And I truly believe that we can change this. But I think it also means that you have to redefine what activism means. So sometimes it's not like working for nonprofits, like it's actually going out and doing the work. And even the small things like voting, like sharing resources, like having those conversations, like donating money if you're able, donating time if you have it. Those small actions really do add up. And, you know, I think we're past that point where we're looking to, you know, just a few people to do the work for us because it's ultimately our responsibility, right? And so like when I get energized, it's just because I know that, you know, a better, more equitable world is out there and it's within our grasps. And it's just it's just up to us to do it, you know. And to me, words always matter. And like, I'm happy to, you know, share what I know and hopefully bring people along for the ride, because it's hard work, but it's necessary work. And I don't know, things are just much more fun whenever you're with friends fighting for a cause.
Yeah. Tell us what you're for years. The national correspondents have been telling us that Texas is a purple state. I know progressives have been organizing for decades. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, depending on who you ask, and if you know, disregard the gerrymandering that's happening in the state, I would say that Texas is a blue state. But I mean, again, like, you know, like it's true, and it's, again, it's just like the hits keep coming, like despite everything that they're trying to do to suppress us. I like, I'm trying to think, like somebody I think maybe in Georgia was just like, you know, we're not a blue, like we're not a red state, we're a suppressed state. And like, that's totally applicable to Texas, right? Like they are, you know, they're making it harder for people to vote. They're, you know, making these like crazy lines. And I just, the tide is turning, it really is. But, you know, it's up to me and like my fellow Texans to vote. So this is my plug to remind everyone to register and to make sure everyone is registered that you love. Because again, like it's a groundswell, right? Like change is going to happen from the bottom up, and very rarely does it happen from the bottom down, right? Like we saw that with any sort of big civil rights issues. Like it's always the groundswell. And I'm happy to be part of that groundswell, right? And I'm happy to connect with others who also want to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such an important sentiment, because I think for probably the majority of my entire life, the narrative has always been that, oh, people don't vote, people don't care, people are apathetic. And we saw in the last national, that's just absolutely not true. And that when given further opportunity to vote, people come out in droves. So everyone, don't forget, if you're there, you haven't registered to vote. We have lots of things to vote on this year. Is there anything you want to share, any or kind of last words of wisdom to your fellow progressives and activists out there?
I mean, you know, especially like, it sounds so, you know, it sounds so trite, but like in times like these, like, you know, self-care is really important. Like you can absolutely step back, you can absolutely slow down, but you cannot under any circumstance like disengage or become desensitized, because that's how they get you. Like that's what they're banking on, right? Like they're hoping that this wave after wave of like all this terrible like shit for like, so that's coming down will like, you know, be overwhelming. And that's when I think, you know, it's up to us to make sure that we take turns, like stepping back, we take turns, you know, sort of slowing down, but we're always moving, even if it's like at a snail pace, just, you know, just to keep fighting. And it's okay to take breaks, but come back. We need you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so important to people working in this space. Like it's okay to take a break if you need to take time for yourself. And you know, when you usually feel the time, you're like, okay, I like feel motivated again to like get back out there, and you know what's next for you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for all the work that you do, and keep at it. We're here to support you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jessica. Have a great day.
Everyone out there, we're going to be launching season 2 in 2 weeks. We're so excited. Stay tuned for updates. We're going to have so much to share with you. Content, events, lots of exciting stuff for the next season. Thank you, Felice. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.